panel that we have today is to discuss a very interesting, and I call this very interesting because this powertrain has been has divided the industry, if I could say. On one hand, we have the panel here who have gone ahead with hybrids and well proven at least to some extent that there is demand for it. Last year, if my numbers are right, I think we had about 2.5 or 2.3% market share for hybrids. And EVs, which are substantially more in terms of the choice and number of models available, was also about 2.5. So more or less, hybrids, despite being fewer in terms of choice, sold as many EVs. Consumers seem to be ready to accept this technology. But are we convinced that this is the technology that will be a part of our sort of model and powertrain future? Is it a bridge towards electrification, or is it a distraction, as some of the others in the industry have been saying? So, I would like to kick this off straight away with you, Gulati-san, because you all have kind of kick-started, I would say, really kick-started the hybrids. And when I mean hybrids, I mean strong hybrids. We're talking strong hybrids in India. What is your take on hybrids, and do you see this as a bridge, or do you see this as a part of a long-term solution?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this panel. I'll take a minute to explain how hybrids were actually introduced. Please. When Toyota started its journey, 1996, we brought in an electric RAV4. Couldn't take off for the same hurdle reasons that we face today: charging infrastructure, time, cost, etc. A hybrid was basically born as a technology to optimize the powertrain that challenges that you had from an EV. So you could use 1/60th of the batteries, 60 versus 1.2, 1.3. You could use an optimized motor, and you could have the benefit of electrification, minus the challenges that are associated. Since then, now, we've sold over 26 million electrified vehicles, primarily strong hybrids world over. If you look at Europe, hybrids have grown, whereas, because of geopolitical reasons, the EVs have degrown in terms of market share. That may be temporary, but the fact is, a uniform fact, that in major markets, hybrids are growing. One of the reasons is because it's a clean technology, it's practical, and it's convenient, and it gives the solution, a green mobility solution to the consumer. Now, going forward, it will play a critical role in our shift towards sustainability, but it will also be a key technology towards creating a sustainable manufacturing local ecosystem for the electric powertrain parts. The reason is simple. A strong hybrid has a full electric powertrain. The batteries may be much smaller, 1/60th that I said, but motor is there, battery is there. The system operates on a high voltage system. Everything is common, so it helps to aggregate demand for the electric powertrain parts, and hence will help to create more innovation, optimization, improved performance, lowering of costs, and in case of India, a faster pace of investment for this ecosystem. So going forward, we see that plug-in hybrids, EVs in the electrified space, and alternate fuels, the ethanol and CBG in the alternate fuel space. These are going to be technologies which are going to play a critical role in our shift towards sustainability, reduction of fossil fuel consumption and carbon emission. So it's going to be there for good.
Right. So I think very clear words there, Gulati-san, that it's going to be a part. It's not just a transition phase. I'd like to move and jump over to your partners, Maruti, who have been on this journey with you all as well. Mr. Bhat, how does Maruti see consumers taking to this technology? And given that you are in the affordable segment in India, do you think that you can bring this down into lower segments where it can make a bigger impact?
Yeah, thanks for the question. But before answering this question, can I add to what Gulati-san just said? I mean, the first question that you asked, I mean, leaving the bridge part away, I mean, for some time, I mean,
Right.
whether it's a bridge or, let me add another dimension to this. I think you talked about 2.3%, 2.5%, together
Right.
it's around 5%, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, for some people it is 5%. I mean, for some people in the ecosystem who are developing an inverter, a motor is 5%.
Right.
For someone it is 3%, okay, 2.5%. So there are some people in the room who are gaining from this 5%.
Right.
Okay, so that's one thing. I mean, to us, it's not just a bridge. It's probably going to help adopt the electrified powertrains much faster. So that's from I think Gulati-san talked about the infrastructure part, and also from the perspective of an ecosystem, the supplier ecosystem, the development ecosystem. I mean, a lot of paths are common, a lot of thought process is common, BMS for that matter. It's a common BMS. I mean, the BMS hardware, or even the thought process is similar. The software logics are similar. So for those guys, it is 5%. So both of them together can reach some levels. I mean, China today is talking about 50% electrified powertrains, or they call it EVs.
Right.
But half of that is PHEVs, right? They are hybrids.
Right.
Okay? So, I mean, let's not forget that. But the other aspect, which we generally don't talk about, is our journey towards decarbonization or net zero, and how these technologies will work towards decarbonization. Today, I mean, you talked about a bridge. Maybe there is this bridge which is there, and ultimately, when the energy decarbonization happens, maybe the EVs will start actually giving us the benefit. I mean, if you talk about a reduction in carbon, of course, all these technologies will work. But if you talk about net zero, unless and until the energy gets decarbonized, you can't really go to net zero. That's where hybrids today have a big role to play. I mean, a hybrid today has much lower GHG on a well-to-wheel basis than even an EV today. I mean, that's because of the grid. And it's only when the grid becomes green that the electrified vehicle, the fully electrified vehicles, will actually start giving us pain. So that is the bridge, probably from a decarbonization perspective, which is going to help us there. I mean, that aspect also has to be kept in mind. Now, coming to customers, of course, we are in the space which is more, in a lower bracket, or what you call, I mean, more economy or value-oriented products which are there. But we are also graduating. I mean, we are graduating to bigger vehicles, and we have vehicles which are catering to the customers in that bracket, where we have now the hybrid powertrains, and we would very soon also have the fully electric vehicles as well. And we hope to make, cater to those customers also, which we have not touched till now. So that's our aim. But as far as going down is concerned, there is a concern, of course. The concern is cost. Today, these hybrid vehicles are very expensive. There's no support. I mean, maybe there is a discussion which probably could be held around that aspect, but that's where there is trouble. I mean, how do we cater to customers? How do we go to the mass market, have larger population adopt this technology so that we get quick gains? Quick gains, not just from the efficiency gains, but also, as Gulati-san said, getting the biofuels into the hybrids, which will give us, multiply the gains. So that's a challenge, but we are working on it.
Right. No, thank you so much, for that. And that was, in fact, my next round of questions in terms of, policy support, because right now a hybrid does not have any special, or I would say any consideration beyond being an internal combustion, an ICE model. So we will come to that. But I just want to take up from what you said, in terms of costs, and maybe, talk about that. We've got on our panel, Mr. Simili, this technology, do you think that it is a sunset technology in that sense, or is there still research, and development that is being done? And this question is more from the R&D. Do you think there's more scope for hybrids to further develop?
Thanks again, and glad to be part of this panel. Absolutely, I think as my colleagues here said, in the hybrid space you have different architectures, and every architecture in the powertrain can be optimized for particular application, right? Whether it's light commercial vehicle, pass cars. So through that exercise, you drive innovation in sizing the system and then further breaking it down to battery, motors, power electronics. So that entire input vector that comes in to drive innovation in these building blocks for the powertrain is super critical. And that, as Anoop already said, will translate to even a full EV adoption or an EV powertrain in the future or existing platforms. So we at BorgWarner definitely don't see hybrids just as a stopgap or an interim thing. It is definitely part of our continued development into optimizing the technology on how we design motors, how we design power electronics, and how we design the hybrid transmissions. So it's very much an active part, and all these innovations will, as I mentioned, only evolve and help drive the value proposition to the customer in terms of performance, efficiency, and cost.
Right. No, thank you. Now I'll move that question also over to you, Mr. Awasthi. From an R&D point of view, first of all, do you think there is more scope to further improve hybrids? And is there a skilling requirement, perhaps, in terms of these powertrains? Right from the whole cycle, right from whether it's research, manufacturing to even service. They are in fact, the sort of opponents to hybrids keep saying it's too complex a technology because you've got everything in it. You've got EV charging, you've got ICE, so it's far too complex.
I mean, it's difficult to predict whether there are more opportunities to develop, let's say, much better hybrids in future. Always difficult to predict, right? However, if you look at the architecture-wise which is available from P0 to P4, right? I think each one has its own use. So P0s are one which are known as generally mild hybrids, and they are making our cars on day-to-day basis fuel efficient and other things, while P4s are considered when we are talking about performance. For example, AMGs are going into P3, P4 range. And that's how hybrids have been used so far. And for example, P3 example would be giving a 100-kilometer range. A typical E300 from our portfolio is if you have that car, and then you can drive about 100-kilometer daily basis purely on electric mode. You don't need to fill diesel completely. So this is how we have been using it. The question here is, what's the use case for future? What is the trend I'm looking at? So what I'm looking at, hybrid is coming back to in P0, P1 mode. That means it's more of a support for the combustion engine. That's one trend I'm seeing. And you will all observe, even in India, suddenly you will see if you compare the sales data from these two organizations, and the contribution probably plus Honda is 27 to 30% jump in sales from 23 to 24 itself. That means there is a renewed interest from the customers as well. There's another thing which is emerging in China right now. It's called REX. What is REX? Where you are calling it range extender, but it's nothing but you reverse the plug-in, right? So you will say that in plug-in, combustion engine was the main driver, and then you had additional 100-kilometer range, and now in REX you are saying it's mostly electric, but combustion engine to do the rest of the thing. So I think for me that's also kind of hybrid powertrain discussion. Architecture-wise, it would be very different, of course, but this is where we are looking. So I don't know what happens to the REX. Will REX be a discussion here in India as well? But definitely it is right now in China, and I think there are companies who are doing quite a bit of REX. Right. We are also, Europe is also talking about it, what's really going on, but very difficult to, do some kind of crystal ball gazing here and find out what is really going on.
Right.
But so, eventually, what I'm saying is any technology, and including hybrid, if you see, will depend on the context. For example, in India, if you see the car drivers, including Ola, Uber, and other taxis, about 80% of this mobility happens in urban centers, and 20% is in rural. In Europe, if you talk about, because this is where the hybrids were very, very strong, it's completely reverse. The urban demand for personal mobility is only 40%. So you have to see if in India somebody has to think about whether can through policy somebody can, or through some understanding customers, you have to understand the use cases. For commercial applications, it's the reverse. In India, because of absence of organized logistics and many other things, 60% commercial vehicle application is in rural areas. So I think we have to understand many other things before we really say anything meaningful about any technology, including the hybrid.
Right. No, absolutely. And in fact, you brought up a very interesting point, on REX or range extenders. It isn't a new idea. In fact, Nissan have had it, the e-Power in the Note, in a small hatchback. Maruti are looking at that. So, moving to you in that case, since we know you are experimenting on that, do you see potential for range extenders in India, Mr. Bhat?
I don't know if we are experimenting with that, so I'm giving that.
I was hoping to get a nice little scoop there, but yes.
But let me put it this way. I mean, whether it's range extenders or PHEVs, and primarily whether it's a series hybrid based or a series parallel or a parallel hybrid based, I mean, that's the key difference which is there. But in the end, they're all like, you have an EV and you have an ICE. So you have a kind of a range extender in both the cases, which is there. How we look at it is, I mean, India is vast and diverse. I mean, there are, like you also said, I mean, there are various use cases which are there. I mean, for primarily an urban use case, maybe a BEV would definitely be even today, I mean, there are a lot of these taxis which are making sense, and TCO is really good for them. But there are other sorts of customers where, I mean, they do an occasional highway, or, I mean, maybe on every weekend they go to Delhi Jaipur, Delhi Dehradun, or some kind of travel like that, where the range anxiety kicks in. I mean, that's keeping them away from the electrified vehicles, which is where we are not gaining from the merits of the hybrid, which is there. So in that space, probably such vehicles, which is like range extenders or even PHEVs, will make sense. I mean, let me give the example of China again. I mean, China last maybe 3-4 years. I mean, if you look at 3-4 years, the BEV sales have kind of stagnated and kind of saturated. But what is increasing are these REX and PHEVs, basically. They're increasing a lot. Probably this year and maybe or next year, they're going to be 50-50. 50% BEV, 50% are going to be these PHEVs or range extenders as such. So there is a need, probably, and there were people who wanted BEVs, they're buying BEVs today. There are people who feel that there is a merit in going for PHEVs, they're buying those PHEVs today. And there would be people, and like in Europe, for example, the hybrids are still growing. The hybrids are growing, the EVs are not there. The PHEVs are also growing. Lately, they have started growing. So there are these use cases where there would be people who would need all sorts of mobility solutions. So there would be coexistence of these technologies, whether it is hybrids, whether it is PHEVs or range extenders or BEVs. So we have to cater to all. I mean, let us keep the national objective in our mind and see what is it that we want to achieve with this electrification program. Right. And it serves that purpose. All of these serve that purpose.
Right. No, absolutely. So, it's I think, very interesting and very clear that hybrids are an integral part of our sort of solution going forward. And within hybrids, it seems to be that we have to look at all the kinds of hybrids, at least in terms of application. Coming now, then, if we know we need this solution, what is your, and I'll maybe start with you, Mr. Gulati, because you do work with the government. What is your sort of wish from the government when it comes to support for hybrids? And do you have a thought on as to which kind of hybrid technology should be pushed, right from like, we were just listening to the rest of the panel saying whether it's range extenders or plug-ins or mild hybrids. Do you have also a particular focus on where you think the government should subsidize?
Yeah, thank you. Before I go on to answer that question, I just want to bring another point Recently, 2 years back, we introduced the Innova High Cross prototype, which used 100% ethanol. That's trying to, what that does is that blends both the best of both the worlds. So you're substituting gasoline 100% with ethanol, which is zero carbon fuel, and you're bringing in efficiency through a hybrid powertrain. So the possibilities are immense. In Brazil recently, there was a PHEV with 100% ethanol. We showcased that in the Auto Expo. So these two technologies, incidentally, on a well-to-wheel basis, are globally the cleanest in terms of carbon emissions. That's a factoid. Now, coming to your question specifically. Now, if you look at government policy today, does it support hybrids? Technically, yes, it does. From a GST point of view, for small cars, the difference is 1% cess. In case of large cars, it varies from 2% to anything between 5%. So that is the GST part. I'll come back to it later. If you look at PLI, yes, all technologies from an auto component point of view are supported. And eDrive, which is a key component that goes into a strong hybrid, a hydrogen, and a BEV, was given PLI. And our group companies actually, amongst the first auto component companies to have got it. We are manufacturing it. We're exporting it back to Japan also. States, there are at least, that I know of, 12 to 13 states that have strong hybrids in their policies that support it. So I think there is a good recognition. Then what's lacking would be the natural question. The answer to the natural question is very simple. To the consumer, it's not the rate that matters, it's the rupee that matters. So if you give 2% differential between a gasoline and a hybrid, given the gap in the manufacturing cost, with such a small differential, the consumer today inadvertently is actually paying more tax, more GST plus cess on a hybrid versus its corresponding gasoline. We sell, the products. We have a gasoline when we have a hybrid. The hybrid is giving 50% fuel efficiency improvement. It has a much lower carbon footprint. Yet, as a consumer, when you buy it, it's inadvertent because these technologies in mass segment have come in recently. So I think it is this inadvertent disadvantage that exists today in rupee terms, not in rate, in rupee terms, that needs to be addressed. And that goes back to my submission in the morning. If you want to make it very fair, neutral, best for the country, best for the consumer, best for OEMs, look for a parameter which is based on merit, which is based on science, and that is basically reward or punish fuel efficiency, or which is carbon, basically, which is a measure of fuel efficiency. So I would say if we can do that, it's not just about hybrids. It'll be a proportionate benefit for any of the clean technologies, whether it's a PHEV or a range extender or a hybrid or a mild hybrid or a more efficient ICE versus a less efficient ICE. So that brings in innovation in the market, because then OEMs can be very innovative to bring solutions to drive the end objective of achieving much higher fuel efficiency at a much faster pace, because they can see the reward or the benefits or the disincentives. So that would bring in a much better alignment. To my mind, that is what needs to be done.
Right. So reward the result and not the technology, essentially. Right. So, speaking of the technology and its application in India, Mr. Simili, over to you. I'd just like to bring in, do you think that, hybrid technology needs to be tweaked to an India-specific solution, or is what exists globally already good enough for us here in India?
So I think that's a great question, and we've been actively looking at this space last couple of years. And one of the realizations we're seeing is, yes, looking at the global technology or the available technology in this space globally is a great starting point. We've come to realization through several of our internal research and analysis that you have to look at the drive cycles in order to size the system and components for this propulsion technology. And why that is important is because you can then drive optimization and cost by sizing the right motor, sizing the right power electronics for India application. And thereby giving value to the, in our case, the OEM and then obviously the end customer. So my answer there would be, and this is where I think another key point I want to make from most tech centers is this, because there is so much, it's a big optimization problem. The concept of digital twin or virtualization and analyzing these propulsion architectures in a virtual space becomes so much more important, because that way you can really accelerate the selection and the optimization that you're looking to do for India conditions and India drive cycles. So I would say we have a good starting point, but then work still is going on, and we have to work collaboratively with OEMs to understand what is that differentiator requirement that drives design changes and thereby helps improve affordability and cost on these architectures.
Right. So clearly, I think, like you said, it is a good starting point, what we have with global technology. India, we can further tweak that, to maybe our solutions. And speaking of, then tweaking that, there is a lot of discussions in terms of, I wouldn't say tweaking, but applying the right sort of hybrid technology, because there's a lot of debate going on whether plug-in hybrids are really fit well into the India scheme of things. Because in India, we say we have a charging infrastructure problem. Not everyone, first of all, has charging infrastructure at home, ability to charge their EVs because they live in high rises or park on the streets. And if they do have a ability to charge, then they'd probably go straight to EV. So if you are, with a plug-in hybrid, would that make sense for India? And maybe to you, Mr. Awasthi, because you all do have, like you mentioned, also plug-in hybrids. Do you think that it can work in India? Is it a solution for India?
So, for me, it's very difficult to tell whether it will work in India or not, but you also have to look at what are the other options available. I mean, yes, you're right. If plug-in hybrid has to work, you need some points to charge. And generally, plug-in hybrids were designed not for charging stations, but charging at home and at charging at workplace.
Exactly.
Right? And if not at workplace, even charging at home will work, and then you don't have to deal with any other anxiety here, whether I will find charge in office or not. So yes, definitely it will work, because as I said, use case is that let's say a plug-in hybrid with whatever capacity, if you can get a range of 50 to 100 kilometer, most of the urban situations are taken care. You don't need diesel or gasoline on day-to-day for the day-to-day driving needs, and then you will use diesel and gasoline only when you are going out. So yes, technically it can work, but then it's not just a technical problem to solve here. It's a bigger problem. It's a commercial problem, business problem, because otherwise plug-in technology exists in the market, would have been very easy to bring it in India by any other OEM, right? So, and then going by the evidence that we have today, it has not worked for India. So very difficult to tell will it work or not. But I leave it there. For everybody else to ponder that if you have to really say, yes, it can work, what will make it work?
Okay. Right. So, Mr. Gulati, since you also have plug-in hybrids internationally, what is your view on this suitability to India?
Well, if you look at from a consumer point of view, one is the performance, the convenience, top-notch, no issues. The second point is, the anxiety, which was mentioned. It's not going to be there. Now, what's holding it back? To my mind, what's holding it back is the same story which is also afflicting the hybrids. So the problem only becomes much more aggravated, because if in a hybrid you have 1.2 to 1.5 kilowatt hour battery, in a PHEV, you would invariably have something between 8 to 12. Right, plus the other system, plus a charging capability, which adds additional manufacturing costs. So if you're facing the same plug-in hybrids today have the same taxation structure as strong hybrids. So if strong hybrids in rupee terms turns out to be, much higher than a gasoline, a plug-in hybrid would be even more worse. What it means is that then the TCO doesn't work out. There is a higher sticker shock to the consumer, and there is a TCO factor as well. The same problem that afflicts BEVs. If you can solve this issue of merit-based taxation, I see no reason why PHEVs won't take off and won't take off at a rapid pace. Because what advantage you get is the fact that, like very rightly mentioned, with a range of 50 to 100 kilometers, practically your all daily runs are taken care of on an EV mode at a very low operating cost. And you don't really have to worry of the charge going off because you have your carrying energy as well on board. So that way, if you look at it, it's really going to be a perfect solution, given the fact that we are going to be facing the charging infrastructure issues going ahead. Now, the other point to see is what's happening globally. Like was mentioned, for 2 years running in China, PHEVs was growing at the fastest possible rate. And 82% year on year before, around 70% last year. And if you look at it globally, of all the electrified vehicle growths that have happened, hybrids grew globally at 27% year on year. BEVs grew at 25% year on year. And PHEVs grew 60% year on year, driven primarily by China. There was degrowth in Europe on PHEVs, primarily same reason as BEVs. So a long answer to summarize, I believe it can do exceptionally well, provided the upfront cost is sorted out, and this can be sorted out in a similar manner as BEVs. Not only resolve this issue of extra rupee tax, but give some benefit, make it attractable for the consumer to make sense from a total cost of ownership, then you're done.
Right. So, I think you have something to add there.
I mean, from another perspective, when we talk about, I think it was already mentioned earlier, in terms of battery, for example. I mean, if you have a vehicle which you want to take, even on long drives sometimes, I mean, maybe once in a month or once in 6 months, you would have maybe 500, 600 kgs of battery in your car, which you're not utilizing. You're only running for 50 kilometers every day. Maybe a 60, 70 kilowatt hour battery, you're like lugging that weight every day. It's very inefficient. But in this case, it's the most optimized. So every day you are running and depleting your battery and charging again and depleting your battery. So it's the most optimum. So one EV would also be, one EV is equivalent to many more PHEVs that you can make with the same raw material. And we are scarce as far as this raw material is concerned. So from energy security, we get into another kind of a security here, but that's the most optimum way of, as an engineer, I would say that's the most optimum way of building efficient powertrains.
Right. No, that's a very interesting thought, because PHEVs, I will confess, even from my point of view, I was skeptical about whether Indian consumers would take to it. But like you said, it makes sense mathematically too. You could make it, makes perfect sense. But cost, like Mr. Gulati has been speaking of, and Mr. Simili, from your point of view, what can be done to reduce the costs in terms of localization? Because we know a lot of brands are on different levels of localization of hybrid technology in India. We know Honda technically came in with the City way back, but didn't really localize too much of the hybrid system. So what's your thoughts on that? Can it be done? And what should be the components that we should be addressing in terms of localization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think speaking from the hybrid architecture standpoint, obviously I think just recently in the news it's come out on the duty waive off on battery components. So even if you assume, battery, whether it's 1 to 2 kilowatt hour battery or the higher 60 to 80 kilowatt hour battery is the biggest cost portion. But what we are looking at BorgWarner is outside of that, there is still a huge value proposition to be set up where you can bring the local manufacturing. and that is through the transmission, the gearbox. So mechanical integration, I think in India we are already up there along with the rest of the globe. In fact, we are making in India and exporting out. Motor technology is one I see, which is the next adoption, where we see more local content coming into the motor technology. It can be interior permanent magnet machines, which are the more popular ones, but also induction machines, so that's got no magnet content, and again, it's been a workhorse of any electric drive systems globally, so that's a motor technology that's very interesting, and locally, huge potential in India to make that at scale for automotive applications. And lastly, I would say the power electronics space. That's a space even I'm very much passionate about, is how can we get power electronics, semiconductor manufacturing, and I know there are a lot of schemes that government is now rolling out both at a state and a central level, which is a huge plus. So looking at from that value proposition standpoint, I think all these building blocks for supporting either a hybrid or an electric vehicle powertrain is super critical. And I don't think, whichever way the consumer decides in terms of the adoption rate, whether it's staying longer with hybrids or PHEVs and then transitioning to BEVs, these building blocks are absolutely fundamental. So focusing on that from a local India manufacturing perspective makes a lot of sense, and a huge opportunity there for us to contribute.
Great. So I think, it's been a very, very enlightening discussion. I know we are running out of time, but just last round, from everyone, I think we've established very clearly that, like the other powertrains we've discussed all through this day, like diesel definitely has a future and is part of the model mix. Hybrids too seem to have their place in this multi-fuel, multi-powertrain future. So what do you think, and I just, run it down the panel to conclude, what do you think is the next 5 years the percentage going to be like in terms of hybrids?
I'll maintain my morning stance. The world is VUCA. Very difficult to put numbers, but definitely we're heading towards a much more sustainable future. The mix is going to be multi-technology, multi-fuel. And besides the policy space, it's going to be geopolitics, which is seemingly becoming a critical factor in determining how things will shape out.
Right. Mr. Awasthi, would you like to hazard a guess on that?
So I'm not a percentage person, but I want to add a few things here. Look at what is happening in terms of technology in BEV space. Have we found the right battery chemistry? Probably not. Have we finalized our final battery materials? Probably not. I mean, few weeks back, we demonstrated a solid-state battery in our car on roads driving 1,000 kilometers. So the lithium-ion debate is not really over yet. That is one part. Second part is the technology. I mean, have we decided on what kind of electric motors we are going to use? The world is definite. They definitely want to move away from permanent magnet motors to magnet-free motors. And we all know the reasons. And the technical aspect, for example, how many gears do we need in electrical transmission? The word said 1, but today we're talking 2. Where does it end? So we are in a very, very early phase. And I think that is one reason why this time can be very exciting for hybrids. Very, very, because of so much of uncertainty right now everybody is dealing with. For geopolitical reasons as well. If you talk about energy security, raw material, supply chain security, and decarbonization as well. So decarbonization can't wait, right? You can't wait for everything to be resolved. So I think there is enough opportunity as a nation. I think what I want to add is that, I mean, of course, we have to look what the technology can do for us, hybrid technology in this case. But in general, I think we also need to really answer that what do we as a nation want this technology to do for us? And with that,
okay, so
I'll give it back.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Mr. Bhat, you?
I can't really imagine the numbers. The customers will decide, and we should actually let the customers decide. Right. And our policy should be technology agnostic, fuel agnostic, and let the customers decide. But at the same time, there has to be some promotion. There has to be promotion based on data. That data should actually be sanitized and checked, and based on that, decisions should be made, even for policy making. I mean, that's very important, and not just focus on one and be blind on the rest of the technologies, where actually a lot of merit lies, especially for India. I mean, we are talking about biofuels, I think was mentioned. Maybe you'll talk a lot in the next session. But just to give a heads up, we already crossed 18% this month, India, and we are going towards 20%. We are talking about setting precedences. Japan today is thinking of doing E20 in 2030 now. I mean, looking at India, Japan is thinking of 2030 to achieve E20. I mean, that's a precedence that India can set. And that's where even these vehicles, the hybrid vehicles, can consume this alternate fuel, a carbon neutral fuel, and give many more, leaps and bounds of benefits that accrues to India. I mean, we have to look at what is good for India, what is good for consumer. I mean, if we are clear, this is good for consumer, this is good for India, I don't think we'll make a mistake.
Right. Thank you, thank you. And Mr. Simili, any concluding thoughts from you?
No, I just echo the same sentiments. I think I did hear in a couple of things. I think we as engineering community should look this period as an opportunity rather than, okay, there are, being pulled in multiple directions, where does one invest? I think these problems are really exciting to solve, and I think the right answers based on consumer demand and technology will emerge. So I think it's good to be engaged and look at how these things evolve over a period of time. So yeah, I think I would share the same sentiments as everyone else.
Great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And I think with that, we'll bring this session to a close. Thank you so much for being part of the panel. And thank you for joining here with us.